There we go. All right. So I did post those videos of the stair creation, etc. So that should be on there now. But it was during AutoCAD, so it was probably in the 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock-ish time frame.
Wow.
I know. And somebody else had emailed me about it too, I thought, about posting the video. I don't remember who though. Okay, so today I want to talk a little bit about some detail items. So we'll talk about detail lines, line work, filled regions, detail components, and then I want to just go over we'll do a little bit more wireless switch, okay? So let me do that first, okay? All right, and I was asked just now about the foundation, right? Let me pull up the, let's see. Yeah, gonna have to guess a little bit, right? Let's see, there we go. So let's look at this. The sections are oddly numbered in the A8 series. Oop. Yep.
Can you relink my computer screen?
Relink or unlink?
Yeah, he had her unlinked his.
Oh, you are unlinked. There you go. Okay. There you go.
Thinking about that.
That's weird.
Just imagine, man. God.
You could have missed the entire lecture.
Believe it or not, I
He's just got YouTube over there running cat videos all night.
Honey badger.
That's right. 30 minutes of honey badger videos.
We call my 2-year-old the honey badger. She doesn't care about anything. She turned off my fridge last night. I woke up to because there's a knob inside that turns it all the way to like not cool, you know. And I mean, who else could it have been, right?
A really twisted burglar.
Went in there and like the ice is kind of slushy. That's weird. Yeah. She thinks it's funny. In all of her daily troublemaking, so now I'm afraid she's going to do it again. Ugh. Right? Just pull. That's a good idea. Maybe I can pull it off. You've got kids. Teenage daughters? Oh my gosh. Yeah, well, I was not happy camper today. All right, so here's the foundation. It says C foundation plan. So we're just going to guess a little bit on this. If you were to print these and scale them, right, you could sort of figure it out. But I think a good safe dimension is going to be, you know, the bottom of the footing needs to be below the frost line. So if you make this, 1, 2, 3, if you make this looks like it's about 3 blocks. 1, 2, 3, right? 1, 2, 3. That looks like it's about 2 feet, and then maybe another 16 inches or something, right? If you just kind of guess, and as long as it's below 28 inches, you'll be okay.
Yeah, 30 inches is frost line.
Yeah, I think that's a good, safe, you know, guess, right? So, so we'll just do that, and then this is, you know, 8 inches because it lines up with the block, right? So 8. There's maybe, well, it's actually maybe 1, 2, 6, 3, 4, 5. That's maybe 40 inches. It looks like almost because it looks like you've got about 16 inches there, and so they must have some bad soil where this was built, right? So we can just guess on that, okay? All right. So let's talk about some detail items. I'm going to go to my first level, and I do have some sections drawn, which is what I kind of want to use for today. I'm going to pull this section over here through the vestibule. And I think the first thing I want to talk about is detail components today. Okay, so I'm going to go to my section, my wonderful section. Oh, and in fact, you know, before I do that, I'm going to quickly draw a roof because part of this is going to involve the roof. So I'm going to go, let's look. We've got top of masonry. That's probably where I want to be. Okay, view range, VR, and I want to view this because this is, if I look at this, I don't see the floor plan right, but it's because we're looking from view range up, right? So I'm going to bring this down a level, so below level 2, or not below level 2. Let's see, level below. Yeah, okay. All right, so there we go. I can see the level below there. So I'm going to put my roof in here. I'm going to go to architecture, roof by footprint, and this roof is really just going to be a good square roof. Okay, and we'll manipulate it a little bit after we're done. I'm going to undefine. I hovered over one of these, I tabbed, I clicked, and it selected them all, right? And I'm going to undefine the roof slope because this is going to be, well, it's going to be low slope, but we'll just show it as a flat roof. Okay. And then we'll just choose what kind of roof we want. We'll just pick this 12-inch. Well, let's do the deck. Let's do this steel. Well, yes, we'll do that steel truss one right there. All right, so I'm gonna hit finish, and I have a roof in there. Okay, but I'm gonna go to a section view here real quick and look at my roof and see that you know, this is the top of my masonry, and if I actually look at the drawings for this project, ooh, let's do this. Let's see. You can see that the roof sits down inside there, right? We have a parapet extending up above this, the line of structure here. So we'll just bring this down. We've got 1, 2, we'll just bring it down 2 blocks. So we've got a little bit of space up here, but let's say this is 16 inches. So I want this to, hold on 1 second. There we go. AL align, I'm going to align it with top of masonry. And then I'm going to MV, oops, click, MV, move it down 16 inches. Yeah.
How come I'm out of sight? I don't understand.
It's your view range. So you have to X out of your sketch and hit yes. And then type VR, view range. And essentially what's happening there is you are viewing, you're at the top of masonry looking up.
Oh,
And there's nothing there,
so I need
right?
to look down.
Right. So where it says bottom, that one, oh, you can't do. Oh, you're on a ceiling plan.
Oh, whoops.
There we go. So I can do view range. This one you can go level below and that level below there, and it will work. All right. So I've got my roof in there, and it's, you know, sitting below the parapet just like is shown here. So everything looks pretty good there. Did that work? Oh. You have to do it on both of them. These two have to match.
This one too?
Yep.
Okay.
There you go.
Oh,
There it is. All right. So let's talk about detail components. And I'm wanted to draw the roof in just so that we had some details that we can add to this. Okay. So I added the section marker here, and that looks pretty good. And now what I want to do is I want to add a wall section marker here. So I'm going to go over to my call out view. I'm going to go to call out, and I'm going to create a call out around this wall. Okay, so by doing that, click, click, I'm only viewing that portion of my wall section now. Okay, and the idea behind these drawings, right, is that we sort of go from the very generic to the very detailed, right? So if I have my overall building section here, this shows relationships between, you know, vertical relationships, like between the floor and the ceiling, and how the structure works and how the roof is interacting and where the stairs are, and, you know, vertical type relationships. But you're not going to see a huge amount of detail here. Okay, so we don't see a lot of text on it. We don't see a lot of detail components. You know, this just gives a good general broad overview of the project, right? So this is the generic. we get to a little bit more detailed with a wall section here. So I'm going to go back, change my coarseness level. Here, you know, we're going to show a little bit more detail than we did on the overall section. So our connections are going to be a little bit more defined. You may call it a wall type here to define, you know, what the wall assembly is made out of. You might have a little bit of text, but it's just a step up from that overall building section, okay? Then we're going to add a third level of complexity, and we're going to add a detail. So I'm going to create another, view, call out, and I'm going to create a detail, right? So we go to the very generic overall building section, we zoom into a wall section where there's more information added, and then we zoom into the detail area where there's a ton of information added. So we actually see how all the components come together, they're defined, and they're called out. So I'm going to turn off my crop region. There we go, click, click. And now I have my detail here, okay? So once we get to this level, we're going to want to see some different things happening here, right? And I would say that you're going to see this detail level here, you're going to see it here, and you're also going to see it down here at the foundation, okay? So I'll create another call out. Oops. There we go. Maybe like, you know, oop. Yeah, right there. There we go. And then you would have likely one more down here somewhere. Okay. All right, so let's go. I'm going to go to this one actually. Okay. So we have this information here, right? We're going to want to see kind of a detail level that looks like this, right? You're going to want to see how the deck comes in and where it bears, and there's an angle there. And we have the block out here and how that's cut, and potentially you're going to want to see where the truss comes in, right? And we're seeing the fluting on the deck here. We're seeing the concrete. If you zoom in even further, you're seeing a little cut stud right there, right? We're seeing a hatching for the insulation. Detail level that we don't see on the other drawings, essentially. So I want to show you how you're going to add that level of detail here, because in AutoCAD, when you detail items, right, you want to show a cut stud, you draw a rectangle and you draw an X through it, right, and that's a cut stud. So in AutoCAD, you draw these things, right? In Revit, you're going to use detail components and you're going to place them on the drawing here to represent those items. So it's kind of the same idea, just a different workflow, okay? So, for example, if I'm here and now it's time for me to detail this, right, so that it looks more like this, essentially. Let me do this, right? I want to maybe show the cut CMU here. Okay, we're going to use a detail component to accomplish that. Okay, detail components are view specific, so that means that if I place them in this view, you don't see them in any other view. Okay, they are flat. So they don't have any 3D nature to them, and usually they're a composed item. So where with AutoCAD I wanted to draw a cut stud, I would draw a rectangle with two X's, like an X through it. All of those items are contained in a detail component in Revit. Okay, so here, yep.
Can we import AutoCAD detail into this?
You can, but you shouldn't,
Why not?
because
It's better that way.
it's not better that way. Trust me. I love AutoCAD, right? I love AutoCAD. I love the drafting workflow in AutoCAD because I feel like it's quicker to draw details in AutoCAD than it is in Revit. I firmly believe that, even still, after working in Revit for over a decade, right? But I firmly believe that when you start bringing AutoCAD details into Revit, it's too much. So, you know, the thing that I don't like about Revit is the menus, right? I need a detail component. I got to search through a menu to find it, right? When in AutoCAD, it's like, you know, REC, yeah, exactly, and it's done, right? We're free from the menu, yes. So when you start adding AutoCAD stuff in here, it starts bringing in those dumb lines and it puts them in your menus, right? So instead of just searching through like, when I want to draw detail lines in here, instead of just searching through line 1, 2, 3, 4, invisible hidden, I'm searching through ACAD 461023, you know, $/A-ano-dims, right? So my menus start to populate in areas where AutoCAD can integrate itself, right? All of that AutoCAD information starts to integrate itself into my menus. So it's problematic, right? Otherwise,
Keep the details separate or just find the PDF.
you could bring a PDF in, although I heard a rumor, right? And I'm still going to look into this. Somebody at my husband's office said they have like a, right, those of us that used AutoCAD a long time ago, a Lisp or something, right? Well, I guess yours, anyway, learning about Lisps now, right? But there's something that you can take an AutoCAD file and turn it into a detail in Revit and then bring it in. Maybe it's the perfect world, right? So anyway, but you can, yes, you could link it in.
It'd be ideal if those could be a link.
Right,
You open AutoCAD
Right.
through it,
draft with that workflow and then bring it back in. I agree.
because Revit is way better to
Right.
bind everything together.
Yeah, yeah, it's almost like you almost would benefit from like a block editor type window where you're like, hey, I'm going to start drafting details. Open up the editor and you draft your details and then you go back. It'd be nice. I hear you. Okay. So we're going to add detail components, and I have to, I'm going to show you where they are, and then we're going to have to load some in, okay? So if we go to annotate, and you come over here, there's a component option within annotate, right? But there's also a component option under architecture. So if I go to architecture and I go to component like this, it's going to bring in 3D components like couches and plumbing fixtures and different things like that. If I go over here to annotate and I choose component, it's going to bring in detail components, okay? We have detail components and we have repeating detail components. So a detail component is something like a cut stud, right? And hopefully in this little video it will show us. So I can't move my mouse, but the anchor bolt, the cut stud, the siding, the insulation, all those things in that little image right there are detail components, okay? A repeating detail component is going to be something like CMU block, right, like that, where it's a line-based component where you click and it just populates that pattern across a line or about a line. So I go to component, detail component, and again I have a menu, right? My big pet peeve here, where I have a few detail components loaded, right? So those aren't any good to me, so I'm going to go load a few more. So I'm going to go to Insert, Load Family, and you'll notice we have a detail item folder, and they're all organized according to the CSI specifications, right? Which I mean is great, but even I don't remember where everything is in the CSI specifications, right? I do know where wood is going to be, so that's usually the one I'm looking for, right? So I'm going to go to wood framing, and you'll see these are some of the detail components, right? There's a cut stud. We have a side or a top view of lumber. Oh, hello. Oh, yep, you did leave your coat. So I'm going to click on this. I've got my rough cut lumber. Hit open. What size would you like? Well, there's about 400 of them, right? And of course, you never know when you're going to need one, so I picked them all. Yes, I know it's going to take a long time to load them. And it didn't really, right? But now when I want to add some detail components, I go to Annotate, Component, Detail Component, and I pick the size, right? 2x4, and I can spacebar, click, click, MV, or I could have just put it in place, or I'm just faking this in, right? But this is how you would go about it, right? Then you put it.
These are metal studs anyway.
Yeah, yeah. But there's a metal stud one too, right? And if we wanted to add insulation, this is still considered a detail component, right? We click on the insulation. This is a good thing about Revit. I give it a width, right? 3.5 or whatever, and then I click, move in the direction I want to go. Oh, it's magic, right? Uh-oh, problem?
That's amazing.
Oh, it's amazing. It is amazing compared that. This is one advantage over AutoCAD. All right. So if I wanted to find a metal stud, right, I would go to Insert, and I would load my family. I would go back down to detail items, and that would be under metal, right? Structural steel framing, I think that's what it's under. Nope. Let's see, metal studs, there we go. Right, so I can bring in my little stud here, hit open, and there is a shortcut, I think. Nope, I think I've customized that, never mind. Component, detail component, and my little stud is there, and click, and there it is. Okay. So this is how you're going to add detail. Things like anchor bolts and insulation and studs and siding and plywood and gypsum board, they all have detail components associated with them, right? So I can make it look the way that it actually needs to look. We'll do one final detail component. We'll find a repeating detail component. Insert, or not insert, yeah, insert, load family, and this one's going to be detail item, masonry, CMU. The part of it is too, and I like that there's a lot of options, but there's so many options in here. You're like, which one? You know. Anyway.
I don't like too many choices.
I know.
I go to a restaurant, just give me like 2 choices. Like if I see 15, then like, okay, I'm going.
It's too much sometimes, right? So there's one. Okay, that looks about right. I hit open, and now I go to annotate component, detail component. Oh, and it's an odd one. Oh, it's not even a repeating one. This one's okay. Let's do one of the out of the box repeating. So brick. This functions a lot like the insulation, right, where it just populates. And you can find CMU ones that do that. I didn't realize these were all, you know, kind of goofy like that. 4 by 8 by 8. Maybe I just need to choose a different size. 8 by 8 by 16. There we go. There's a good one, right? So I would move that over into where the block is, and you see it filters out. It filters out the pattern behind it, right? CO, copy, and click. Oop, click. CO. I'm going to multiple copy this. And these are my detail components, right? I mean, when you first start doing this, you look at it and you think, oh, it might be quicker than AutoCAD, right? Because I don't have to draw the square and then draw this and then hatch those two things and maybe potentially make it a block, and right? But it's just not. It's just.
Always make it a block.
What's that?
You should always make it a block, whatever you do in AutoCAD.
Then you can use it over and over again. Yes, I agree, right? And so, you know, yes, but then the menus, you got to search for it, right? Right. So we found kind of a workflow where this actually works pretty well, and it's called groups. So you can make like nested blocks, right? You can take this block and nest it in a bunch of other blocks with other blocks that could create a detail component that is generic, right? So when you're detailing a foundation, you know you need the sill plate, you know that you need the gasket, you know that you need the anchor bolt, you know that you need all these specific things for this one task. And so within your template, you make these Revit groups that then you can go and find them and place them so that you don't have to go and find all the pieces all the time. Anyway, but this is how you're going to detail things, okay? So that's a whole nother animal right there in Revit, right? All right, so we have this detail. How do we add visual interest maybe, or how do we, you know, if one of the lines is maybe not looking the way we want it to, or if I want to add some other line work to this, how do I do that, right? We also, under the Annotate tab here, have detail lines, we have regions, and then where is line work? I'm thinking maybe it's over here somewhere. Oh, well, let's ask good old help. I don't feel like their help menu is as helpful as it used to be either. Line work tool. Modify view. Okay. So it is under modify. modify, view, oh, there it is, line work right there. So there's the icon for line work, okay? So we have line work. Under annotate, we have detail lines and regions. So what detail lines will allow you to do, I click on detail line, the shortcut is DL, is it will allow me essentially to draft like AutoCAD, but just not as quick, right? So I have all my drawing tools up here available to me when I click type DL or I click on detail lines. And I have several different line types I can choose from. Beyond, centerline, demo, hidden, overhead, hidden again, which is different than the other one. Lines, medium lines, thin lines, and wide lines, right? So I pick the line type I want, I click, and I draw whatever line type I want to create. So let's do a wide line so that we can maybe see the difference between the two, right? We've got hidden lines, which are going to be dashed. We've got beyond, which is going to be kind of grayed out, right, or very thin. Demo is going to be a dashed line, right? So we have these line options to help us add detail to our drawings. So for instance, if I, wanted to draw my truss in here, I didn't want to use a component. This is just a bad example, but it's an example. I could click on my detail line, DL, detail line, drop my menu down, pick the line I want to use, and then I could come in here and I could draw, click, right? I could draw whatever I wanted to draw in here, okay? So a detail line is just a dumb flat line that you can draw on any drawing in Revit, and it's view specific. So if I draw this here, it's not a 3D element that shows up anywhere else, okay? I use detail lines a lot when I'm doing like architectural site plan to add detail to different things. I don't use detail, where do I use detail lines a lot? Mostly if I want to kind of put a pattern in something very quickly. So if I want to add control lines to flat concrete, if I want to maybe fake in something, make it look like something that it's not, and I don't want to use a component, I'll use detail lines. But they're a really quick tool that will allow you to draw things in or change visibility of things. I was going to say with this, and I think I used to do this a lot more than I do now, a lot of times with my detail lines, I can click on it, hit create similar. I would come in here, and if I didn't like how this line read for this grid, I would just trace over it, right? Don't want to change the grid. I just want it to look different in this view, so I trace over the top of it. Great. But there is another tool that I can use for this instead of detail lines, okay? So detail lines will allow you to do dumb drafting over the top of anything, and it's view specific, okay? I don't want to get away from this annotation tab. So we have detail lines, we have components, which we just talked about, detail components, and then we also have regions, filled regions, okay? A filled region will allow you to create a region of hatch, essentially, around something, right? And it will also allow you to create kind of a masking region. So if you want to obscure something, like if you're drawing an interior elevation and you want to obscure things around it, you can use a filled region to obscure those things. If you want to show some earth around something that doesn't have earth, you can draw the filled region around it, okay? I use filled regions all the time for different specific tasks. One task I used filled regions a lot for was that example they were showing you, right? The foundation around the foundation, if I don't have topography in here, I will draw an earth, filled region around the foundation to make it look right. I will also draw a little piece of gravel and the little drain, the foundation drain, right, using filled regions, okay? Filled regions, let me go back into my detail here it was working on. There we go. When I click on region, right, I have my filled region here. It's a 2D specific graphic with a fill pattern, right? That's the definition of it. And then we have a masking region, right? These two function very similarly. Although a masking region is technically going to obscure an element, right? But if you use a filled region that is white, it will also obscure an element. Okay, so this is going to be more something where a filled region will allow you to obscure things, but it will also allow you to add patterns to different things, where a masking region will obscure something and it's not necessarily made for adding patterns. Okay, so but they function both the same. I click on filled region, I go into a sketch mode. I choose the type of boundary line that I want around my filled region. So, you know, if I want a wide line, I would click on wide line. I would click on however I want to draw it, right? Maybe I want to obscure these pieces. I pick whatever pattern over here I want to show. This is hatching in Revit essentially. So maybe let's choose a solid black pattern, and I hit finish. Okay, and I hit escape, and I've got a hatch region. Okay, I can click on this, I can hit edit type, I can create a brand new hatch type just like I do anything else in Revit, right? So if I have a black hatch pattern here, I can choose duplicate, give it a new name like solid white pattern, hit OK. The color is going to be whatever color you want it to be. So I can choose white, hit OK, OK. And instead of a black pattern, I have a very thick outline over this white region here. Okay, I can click on it. Whoops, not that far. Click. I can drag this down, and I can change it. Right, so horizontal lines. So this is helpful too, and you will learn different ways to do finished plans and things like that, but this is pretty helpful for if you needed to fake in like a specific tile pattern on the floor of a project you're designing or whatever, or maybe you need to obscure something, right? We only want to see, I'm going to grab this little hatch, you see these little grips. We only want to see one side of the detail, right? So I could use this to help me obscure it. Drag it out past the crop region, change it to solid white, and it obscures that side of it. Okay. Filled regions are going to be, you'll use filled regions for a lot of things, right? But again, I think I've said it about 8 times. It's a view specific item, so if I create it here, it's not going to show up in any other view, okay? One kind of quick tip for filled regions and detail lines and different things like that, I can click on them. Oops. I can type Control-C, copy, and I can go to a different view, like this view, Control-V, and I can paste it, right? So those things can be pasted from view. Another helpful hint, right? You'll have times where I have this view of this object. I click, I zoom in, I have this view of the same object. And then I zoom in, click, I have this view of that same object, but just zoomed in, right? I have different places on the same thing that I have different levels of detailed views, right? Which at times may call for having some of these same detail elements in the exact same spot on 3 different views, right? I can copy elements from one view to the next, and I can also paste them in the exact same spot, right? So if I wanted to grab this filled region, for example, or actually let's choose this detail line, tab, click, Control-C, copy, and I go back to here, and I want it pasted in the exact same spot. This is the best thing ever. I use this so many times. You go to Modify, you go to Paste, Aligned to Current View. So paste, there's a paste option, paste from clipboard, align to selected views, align to current view, and align to same place. So if I choose align to current view, it just drops it in the exact same spot. Okay, and that's really helpful. You can do that with anything in Revit. So notes or text or any type of annotation, detail lines, masking regions, groups, whatever you want. You can pick a bunch of stuff, copy it, and then paste it into the exact same spot on a different view. Okay, so when you're detailing things in Revit, this is how you're really going to go about it. You're going to use detail components, you're going to use detail lines, you're going to use filled regions, right? Let me just pull up. I'm going to show you something. Oh, I might have to go through Google Drive. Hold on. Okay. So I just want to show you a couple of instances of a little bit more complex. Okay. Okay, so here's an example, right? Here's some details. So you look here, all of these things on here, these are all detail components, right? So you've got a ceiling in here, but that ceiling has a plywood detail component laid over it. You have these studs right here, those are detail components. This insulation right here, the spray insulation, right? That is going to be a filled region, right? So you drew that in there. This little C channel right here, that is a, not little, but this C channel is a detail component, as well as this one, right? This tube steel is a detail component, another stud on top right there, detail component. These bolts, this joist, these showing going across there, right, spanning are detail components. And this up here is actually a detail line. So to draw how that roof works, goes up like that, goes back down, right? That is a detail line. And in here, there's a little bit more plywood, and then you have some more filled region, right? And then this weird brick detail, right? This is what the wall looks like, extra framing in here. So you've got detail component, detail component. There's a detail component of the plywood right there, right? And then you have your building wrap, you know, that's shown as a dashed line right there. You've got detail components of your brick, right? Little sealant right there. So you're going to use detail, that's a good example. You're going to use detail lines maybe to create, you know, like a dashed line for your building wrap or your vapor barrier on the inside, right? But most of these, right, when you generate them, they look like this when you start, right? And then you have to add that level of detail to them to make them look like they should with this, right? The parapet cap here, all of this is detail components, little framing members, the, you know, plywood, the plate, the anchor bolt, right, the block right here, all detail components. Then you've got the insulation showing here, right? Those are going to be filled regions. This is likely just a detail line showing the roofing sloping down to here and going across. That's likely just a detail line. So you'll use all three of those things in combination to detail your drawings, right? So when people say, why does it take so long to draw your drawings, right? Well, because there's a lot that goes into it, right? As you guys are all finding out.
Can we create our own detail component?
Yeah, it's a family. So if you wanted to create a new detail component, you would click on New, Family, and then there is a detail item template where you go in and you just generate whatever you want. There are thousands of these though. You can find, like, very literally, I don't make families because I don't have to, honestly. There are so many out there that I can usually find one that is pretty identical to what I want and alter it just a little bit to make it what I want. Yeah. All right. Any questions so far? It's a lot, right? It's a lot. It's good, but it's a lot. All right, detail components, filled regions. I think that's all I wanted to talk about as far as Revit. Let me just make sure. Hold on 1 second.
Actually, I wanted to ask you, so, like, a lot of times, you're gonna have same exact detail repeating. So,
Yes.
how do we
I'm glad you asked that.
tell Revit, like, instead of remaking the detail,
Right.
just tell them it's the
Like
same?
similar, typical, whatever. That's a good question. Okay. Well, I'm glad you asked that. So let me create a sheet here. And I have my detail created. Oh gosh, it's late, right? Feels very late tonight, doesn't it? So if I have this call out here, right, and I click and I place it on my sheet, and I have another call out here. Oh, not that. What is that one? Let's name these. Okay, so this is going to be, I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to name this view name. We'll call this parapet. Oop, no. Okay, and we're going to click on this one, and we'll call this wall base, and we'll click on this one and call it foundation. There we go. Okay. So if I have this detail here, and that's my wall base, and I grab it and I pull it onto a sheet like this, right? And it has a designation. It's number 2 on AE 101, right? And then later on, I need to note this exact same detail, right? So if that detail looks like that right there, this one is likely going to be very similar, right? So if I want to note that again without having to draw it again, just referencing it, I can do that. If I go to annotate and I click on, view, if I go to view and I click on call out, okay, usually when I create a call out, I just click and I draw a rectangle around the call out. But if you notice, we have this little reference other view here. So before I start clicking, I click on reference other view and I choose that view, right? Let's do the parapet. Click, click. It will say, hey, this is 1 on 101 and it's similar. So click, and it takes me to that same detail. And you can do that with a lot of different things. So not just details like floor plans and plan views and things. Yeah. So if you were to want to bring CAD details into Revit, right, you would probably create what's called a drafting view, which is just like a blank place to put, to draw. You'd pop them all into your drafting views, put them on sheets, right? And then you'd go back and reference them like this. Yes, exactly. Yep. So there's the AutoCAD workaround, right? Okay. Oh, I was pulling up. Let me just make sure. All right. So let me make sure I got everything there. Okay. ER 2350. Okay. Field regions, detail line. Oh, line work. Final thing tonight, as far as Revit, we'll do line work. So I'm going to go back over here to my view. I'm going to click here. Okay. There are going to be times in Revit where and let me just say this, Revit has assigned these line weights to objects, right? In the beginning of the semester, I showed you where you could change the line weights. I don't really recommend it. I feel like they're pretty good out of the box, right? But there's going to be a time every now and again where you're like, hey, that line is just too thick, right? And maybe I just want to override that one instance very quickly. You look how I feel tonight. The Bernie eyes, right?
Yeah.
The Bernie eyes.
Killing me.
Maybe it's spring. Is it allergy season? I don't
Heck if I know. I'm a regular person that doesn't get those.
know. I know, I don't usually either. I'm like, maybe it's happening late in the, I don't know.
Allergies off was a week.
So maybe there's an instance where in one case I want to override a line, right? So LW line work, or I can go to modify, and there's my line work tool. And basically what this will do is override the line style for one specific item in that one specific case. So if I click on that, you're right, and just showing you how to do it. Let's say I want this line right here to be dashed. Or I want it to disappear. Maybe just to disappear is a better route, because usually when I use line work, I'm hiding lines that are there and I don't want them to be. So I'll click on invisible line, and I'll click on the line I want to be invisible, and it goes away, right? So I can click on this, click. Sometimes you have to click twice, but it does go away. So here's my first one, click, and it goes away, right? Click, click again, and, oh, nope, that one might, click again. What is that? Well, it's not going away all the way. But you guys get the idea, right? So I can click on items and they go away essentially.
And it's just in that detail.
Just in this detail, yeah. So if I flip back to the wall section, it's still there. Yep. And if I don't like it, I can go back to wide lines, click, and I can bring it back. Click, and it overrides that one instance. Now, I love line work. I use it all the time because you'll find in Revit, things don't always come together nicely, meaning join together nicely. So I like to be able to come in here and just kind of fake turn lines off, right? And it works great. And I don't run into this problem very often, so I say this and I say it's a bad thing, but I don't ever run into it. So, but with line work, there's not really a way to reset your view to make it all go back to normal. I've looked into it because I just, not that I've actually ever really wanted to do it, but somebody asked me about it. And it doesn't seem like there's a way where you can reset your view to make those lines go back to where they were, right? So that's kind of the bad thing about this, but the good thing about it is that I really very, very rarely ever have to, right? So if I'm turning lines on and off, there's a reason why, so I don't usually have to go back. But if I do want to go back, then I can just go and do line work over the top of it, okay? Another really a place where I use this a lot, and it's gotten, again, Revit's gotten better at this, but is in elevations. And in elevations, to make the line work look more visual, right? So I get more depth perception, or get depth, reading of depth in these drawings. So LW line work, right? And let's find a view actually that has, let's see, I've got my vestibule, right? So this vestibule is further back, the building is more towards me. So in this case, I can type LW, and if I want, I can click, 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 right? And I can make that outline of that building, right, look a lot thicker than it is, right? And therefore making it appear like it's closer to me, right, than this is. Okay, so that is another case where I use line work quite a bit, is to make things look graphically correct, the way they should, essentially. Okay, any questions so far? Everybody keeps yawning. It's like going around the room. I look over here and you.
Hey, at least Dawn came this time.
I'm tempted to call it a night and just work on some of the drafting on Monday. Actually, let you guys get caught up on your midterms. Okay, so we don't have a lot left. Next week, what I want to do is on, we're a little bit ahead actually. Let's see. What is today? Today's the 4th. Yeah, so we're a little bit ahead.
That sounds pretty made up.
What's that?
Definitely sounds made up.
That we're ahead? I don't believe you.
I've
No.
seen my building.
Are we just working on that for the rest of the term then?
Yeah. Yeah. So next time we meet, let's do it on Monday, and I'm going to talk with Jameson. I want to, and it may not even be your models, but I want to show you how to use virtual reality with Revit, right? Because it is so easy, and it is, it's amazing, really. So I'll take, in fact, I'll try and find a wireless switch that was completed last semester. What's that?
I accidentally cut off all my stairs.
Oh, you're like, uh-oh. I'll find a couple of good projects, and I'm going to show you how to load your models into the virtual reality, and we'll do that.
Bring you some, like I have a bunch of commercial buildings.
Revit models? Yeah. Oh yeah, bring a couple then. That'd be great. We'll do that.
Today I actually, I think my CEO is
Right.
gonna buy all the equipment because
Virtual reality?
I'm like, yeah, I'm an expert. I have no idea what I'm doing.
I deserve a raise. I deserve a raise, right?
No way. You're an
I told
expert.
him like we can, because I did that camera view and he's like,
Right.
oh my god. Like, we can, like you can, like use virtual
Right.
reality and like walk through the model. He's like, really? Like I need to buy that so we can have this for the customers. Blah
for the customers. You know, it's so funny because when I was in school, this stuff just, I mean, it was around, right? But it didn't work. It worked and the computer couldn't keep up with it. So you would move and it would freeze for 8 seconds and then you'd move again. And 2 minutes later, you could move back to where you were and get stuck again. And it's really amazing. It's really, really amazing. It's so easy. There's a software, it's called Enscape. It's $800 and it's a plugin for Revit, basically. So you buy the goggles, which are like, and the sensors for, I think they're about $600-700 now. And you buy Enscape, it's $800. You have a computer, and that's it. I mean, it's
For a computer, about $5,000.
if you want the really nice ones. No, but this computer will run it, right? We got a grant, right, for getting our stuff, so we got top of the line. But otherwise, just a regular PC would work just fine, honestly. So it's not that unaffordable anymore, you know, and it's, when you guys see it, I think you'll really appreciate what I'm saying, but, it's really great. So we'll do that. We'll do that on Monday. And then I think maybe we'll just start, I'll see if you have any questions. Wednesday, I'll draft some more in the project. These 2 days, I'll draft a little bit more in the project, right? So we have plenty of time and you guys can just come in and work. And just kind of finish your final project and finish up the semester.
So do you want us to turn in what we got tonight?
Yes. All that on Monday. Yeah. Turn in what you have tonight, wherever you've gotten. Just the Revit file. I'm just going to look at your models. I'm not going to look at your sheets. I'm just going to open up your files and look at them. See that there's something there.